Hello, hello. Hey, soul searching girl peeps. It's been a few weeks. I thought I'd do another video, and I have something I want to talk to you about. One of my most common questions that I get. But I just wanted to introduce myself. If you're new to my channel, I'm Amy Logan, soul searching girl, post-Mormon, living a life just to show you that, there's life on the other side of Mormonism. And I think sometimes when you start going through this faith crisis, it feels like, no, there can't possibly be a time where you feel happy and you feel good and whole. Yes, I'm here to tell you, yes, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get through this. It's gonna suck for a little while. It's gonna feel shitty, but you can do this. Because when your whole world just kind of explodes and you're looking at all the pieces falling down, I know that doesn't necessarily feel really good, but you got it. You got it. Keep going. Hang in there. All right. So for those of you who are parents, one of the questions I get the most is, how did you deal with your children? And how did you approach this with them? How did you tell them? So I'm just going to kind of tell you what I did. You obviously have to do what feels best and right for you. But because I get asked this question, I thought I will talk about it. So when I started going through my awakening, was 2006. That's when my whole world fell apart, or at least it felt like it anyway. So 2006, so my kids were 7 and 9, something right around there, 7 and 9-ish. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. You feel like you just kind of got slapped upside the head. And I know there's a tendency for a lot of people to want to run out and like shout from the rooftops what you're going through and all the things you're finding out, and the church isn't true, and da, 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 da. You go down that thing. A lot of people will write an email and blast it out to their people. Some people will post something on Facebook announcing their exodus from the church. Obviously you have to do whatever works for you. My personality isn't quite that way. I mean, obviously I have a YouTube channel. That's where I decided to put it. And I didn't even start my YouTube channel till 2012. So that was 6 years after I kind of went through a lot of it. But 2006 was when it started. So you're going to get to a point where you're going to turn around and look back at your journey. And it will have many different pieces and parts and feelings and all of that. But so my point is, my kids were pretty young. And initially, when I was just going through what I call the research stage, tell me in the comments if you can relate to the research stage. I could not get enough. I could not read enough. I could not explore enough. I just literally was just like reading everything I could and trying to make sense of it in my mind, because at first I started out with like, well, of course it's going to work. It's going to be fine. If the church is true, nothing I could read could tear it down. Anyway, so that was the research stage. So that went on. I mean, it came tumbling down pretty quick, but I'd say it was a good year of just reading. And at that point, I didn't feel like there's anything I had to say to my children because they were still young. And I just knew I didn't know where I was going to land and how I was going to feel about all of this. And so I didn't really say anything to my kids. Started to say things to my husband at the time, and we're no longer together. But, I would say little things to him. But as far as the kids go, and that's where I'm keeping this today, keeping it around the kids, I just felt like it's going to be okay. I don't have to like just pour this down on them to add any stress to them. So I chose not to do that. And then I just would like started to go like only to sacrament meeting. And if you've watched some of my videos, you'll see, I talk about leaving my calling and turning my manuals in and all of that. So that story is somewhere on this channel. But as far as my kids are concerned, I just kind of approached it, not a need-to-know basis, but their father still is a member of the church, and so we had this little dance we had to do. But I just felt like until I knew for sure where I stood, I didn't want to burden them with this, and so I didn't. And so it wasn't until they were a little bit older, a few years after I'd done my research and I knew where I stood, which was I did not believe in the church anymore. I stopped going to church. I stopped wearing my garments. I stopped doing all of those things after I knew where I stood with everything and how I truly believed. And then, you know, that led to my kids sometimes saying, how come you don't come to church anymore? And so it would just open the door for little conversations here and there. But I don't think we had like a real big conversation until they were in junior high. And that's where I shared with them that I don't believe that the church is true anymore. And I chose to tell them that, but I support you in whatever you decide. Your father still believes in the church. I do not. But whatever you do, and I didn't even make it that big until they were in high school, but just let them know that I supported them and loved them, because I look back at my journey, and when I, you know, obviously I was born into the church, raised the whole 9 yards. I don't think, it's like I've said before in another video, I don't believe you can convince anyone of anything. Now, these were my children. These are my children. And obviously I have more of a responsibility to them than to anyone else on the planet. And I just let things come out, and we would naturally discuss and talk about things. So when they'd ask questions, I would tell them. And it really led to some beautiful, fascinating discussions. And if you can get to the point where, and everyone's at a different spot, I just tried to be very kind of objective about it, and not too emotional. Not that I didn't have emotions during this time, believe me, very much tear, very many, like, you know, it was very emotional. But as far as my kids were concerned, I wanted them to know that I loved them and that I supported them in whatever they decide. And as of today, I have one son who's serving a mission in Argentina, and another son who doesn't go to church anymore. And that's the way it goes. And that's all okay for me and my life and my kids, and letting them make their decisions. I mean, I think that's what we want, right? I'm living my life to show them that there's a beautiful side on the other side of Mormonism, and that I love them no matter what. And I want you to think about that, because I know that there's a lot of you who, when you've told people, you've probably lost relationships. Maybe your family doesn't talk to you anymore. Maybe you've had a divorce because of this. You know, we're all in different stages here, but it's a pretty huge thing to go through in life, to have such a paradigm shift. And if you're going through it and you don't have little ones, that's good. But when you do have children, it adds another layer to this whole story. And this whole experience, and just to be gentle and tender with their little souls, you know, depending on how old they are, you know, it might be easier, because they might just never know about the church if they're really little, if you stop taking them. But, you know, mine were a little older, and so I handled it a little differently, and it was a tender situation, but it's all okay. I'm happy with how everything's turned out. And even though I have a son on a mission, I love hearing his stories. I love our weekly emails. You know, as a Mormon, you get to talk to, and your child's on a mission. If anyone's watching this who's not a Mormon, you don't get to communicate. You can communicate through emails, but as far as on the phone or texting, none of that happens except for twice a year, Christmas and Mother's Day. I get to have a Skype with my son, which I got to do that for Mother's Day, and it just meant a whole bunch to me. But, you know, we just love and support each other, and that's how I look at it, because we each get to walk our own path, create the own life, or the life that we want. And especially once you kind of bust through that wall. And, you know, I think of The Truman Show. I've referenced this so many times. If you haven't seen it, that's your homework. Go watch it. When Truman walks beyond that wall that he thought was literally, you know, if you haven't, I don't want to ruin it for you. Maybe I just did. That's okay. It's an old movie. You should know it by now. But you get to make it. You get to create it and live the life that you want, and that's what it's all about. So I just wanted to share that with you. If you have little kids or teenagers, or even if they're not little anymore, you have children, and maybe they have lives of their own, and they've created this whole life around Mormonism. just be gentle with them in their dealing with you going through with what you're going through. Because just like you feel like you've got smacked upside the head, they're gonna feel the same way, especially if they've created families based on the religion that you brought them up in. So there's so many dynamics with this. My kids were relatively young, and so I just took it as a natural progression with them. So I hope that helps. Just be gentle with yourself on this journey, wherever you are. You got it. You're gonna be okay. You are going to be okay. All right, that's it for today. If you have questions or there's things you want me to talk about, please leave them in the comments and click this. Let me know you like it. And if you want notifications whenever I post a video, just click the bell next to the subscribe button. So make sure you subscribe and then click the bell, and then you'll get a notice when I post another video. So, all right, you guys, have a lovely day. Until next time.